Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're less so going to be talking about K-pop songs or K-pop groups, and instead we're going to be focusing on the companies that they come from, and specifically K-pop companies that I believe fell off. Now, if you're not familiar with the term fell off, basically it means that something, in this instance K-pop companies, were at one point much better than they are now. And for this video, all of the companies that I'm going to be talking about have been through an extended period where I feel like they're much worse than they used to be. And I don't mean a bad couple of months or even couple of years. In this video, I'm only going to be including a company if I feel like they've been on the decline for at least 3 years. Usually when I talk about things like this, I usually focus solely on the music aspect, but for this video, I have a lot of different reasonings for each company, so I'll be explaining why I put each one there in each individual section. As always, you're free to disagree with me and voice what you think in the comment section below, but hopefully after hearing my reasoning, you can at least understand where I'm coming from. And I think that just about wraps up the intro, so without further ado, let's talk about company number 1. First off, we have FNC Entertainment, home to groups like I.O.I, SF9, and Flying, P1 Harmony, and Cherry Bullet. And I feel like FNC kind of peaked in success with I.O.I and haven't really replicated any similar amount of mainstream popularity with SF9, Cherry Bullet, or P1 Harmony. Some of the individual idols of these groups have been able to become famous through their acting gigs, such as Rowan from SF9, but when it comes to their K-pop groups as a whole, it seems like most people don't really pay attention to them unless they're in their core fanbase. I feel like anytime any of their newer groups gain any attention, they kind of lose it within a comeback or two. For example, when SF9 went on Kingdom with groups such as Ateez, Stray Kids, and the Boyz, a lot of people started talking about them, but once the show ended and the group had a couple of comebacks, it feels like none of them really matched the success of their earlier releases such as Good Guy. And then you have Cherry Bullet, who a lot of people had anticipation for their most recent comeback with Love in Space, after 3 of the members appeared on Girls Planet, but then somehow Love in Space wasn't even as successful as Love So Sweet, which was their prior comeback. It just seems like their newer groups can't retain any of the popularity they get, unlike I.O.I, who after they release Miniskirt, their following singles seem to do just as well, if not better, every single time. Even when Flying, a band under FNC, had a massive smash hit with Rooftop, that was back in 2019, Flying actually had 2 more comebacks the same year, and I don't know if the other 2 had even a 10th of the success that Rooftop did. I really don't know what went wrong with FNC and why they can't seem to promote their artists to the same amount of success as I.O.I, but the bottom line is that the level at which the company is performing now is not the same as it was 5 or 6 years ago, and I can pretty confidently say that FNC has fallen off.
Yeah, I'm tomboy.
Next up we have Cube, which is currently home to acts such as I-dle, B2B, Lightsum, and Pentagon. And the main reason why I feel like Cube fell off is that they went from having a variety of successful artists to really just banking on 1 or 2. Back in 2nd and 3rd gen, Cube had Hyuna, 4 Minute, Troublemaker, B2B, and Beast, all of which were pretty wildly successful. But nowadays, even though Cube has debuted a lot of groups since then, the only ones that are still successful seem to be B2B and I.dle. Their other older successful acts are all gone. I mean, Hyuna left the company, 4 Minute disbanded, Beast left Cube and started their own company to rebrand as Highlight, and even though later on Cube debuted CLC, Pentagon, and Lightsum, I wouldn't really say that any of those 3 groups lived up to the legacy that their seniors had. We all know how badly Cube managed CLC, and Pentagon, Sans, Shine, and Daisy haven't had much breakout success either. Lightsum also sadly seem to be fading into obscurity, and each new album that they release seems to sell less copies, so their only main sources of income anymore are I.dle and B2B. I don't even know what Cube did to get I.dle so famous. If I'm being honest, I feel like it was more the group themselves who made them successful rather than their company. And as for B2B, I'm pretty sure Cube are just marketing them to their domestic fanbase, which is totally fine. But from the international point of view, they don't seem to be in the limelight that often. Cube fell off because they went from having every single artist under their name being successful to only 1 or 2 with 3 kind of forgotten children, which is kind of a prime example of how their level of game isn't as high as it used to be.
How you like that?
Up next, we have YG. It's hard to describe what went wrong with YG, but I guess the main thing that I would say is that recently it almost feels like a challenge to get into any of their groups. I have Blackpink in my stan list, but I almost feel like I don't want to get into them any more than I am right now because I don't want to be in that state where I have this anticipation for a comeback, but then I have to wait almost 2 years for another release. And even Treasure, in between My Treasure and Jikjin, they had over a year to wait too. I feel like in the past when YG had 2NE1, Big Bang, Winner, and even iKON, who at one point were all active at the same time, you would always have something new to check out and something new to get into. But now it feels like all of their active groups have this schedule of one comeback a year at most, and in between, like, a member is gonna go on hiatus and there's gonna be no explanation. Like, YG has always had money, but recently it seems like they don't want to invest it into new music, and instead they leave all of the fans of all of their groups in this sort of limbo status where they just don't know what's going on and they'd want to come back but they're never gonna get it. And I feel like because me and a lot of other people don't want to be like that, we just don't invest in these groups at all. I feel like in the past it seemed fun to stan a YG group, but nowadays it seems like a chore. And that's why I feel like YG Entertainment has fallen off, because at this point I can't see any incentive to stan any of their groups. While a lot of other K-pop companies seem to be really cranking up the kind of promotion that they give their groups, it seems like YG is just regressing in that regard. And the main point is that YG doesn't seem as lively anymore. If I had to assign YG a signature color right now, it would be gray because it's just bland and boring. And there's nothing about YG or their promotional style which make me intrigued by them or their groups. They just seem kind of dull, I guess. Next up on the list, we have Woolim Entertainment, home to acts such as Kwon Eunbi, Golden Child, Drippin', and Rocket Punch, as well as formerly Lovelyz, and they still have a few members of Infinite under their label, I think. And the main reason why I feel like Woolim Entertainment fell off is that they went from having 2 mega successful groups in Infinite and Lovelyz, to disbanding one of those groups, having the other be on indefinite hiatus, and debuting 3 new groups, where only one of them in Golden Child is decently successful. I just think it's crazy how Woolim has 2 former produce group idols under their belt and somehow made them like significantly more irrelevant than they used to be. I personally only know like 1 or 2 people who stan Drippin', and it doesn't seem like many of the people who followed I.Z*ONE are really tuning into Eunbi's solos. It's like Woolim has every foundation that they need in order to create a successful act, but they somehow drop the ball each time, and it's pretty sad to see. I feel like even though Golden Child got pretty famous back with Wannabe, they're becoming a little bit more forgotten every day because of their company, and Rocket Punch and Drippin' really do not even match up at all to the likes of Lovelyz and Infinite. Woolim has fallen off in almost every single way you can imagine, and I genuinely do not see any hope for this company in the future. And finally, for this video, we have Hybe, and full disclosure right now, this is all music based. Personally, I think every single group that is managed by Hybe right now, minus Fromus9, has had music that started off really good and then has just kind of gradually decreased in quality within the past 2 or 3 years. Of course, as always, this is just my personal preference, but you know, I really loved Crown by TXT, Cat and Dog, Blue Hour, but then something shifted and then we got Love Song and Loser Lover and now Good Boy Gone Bad, which are just songs that aren't really appealing to me. Then you have 17, who I love their earlier discography, but then everything after they released Left and Right feels a little bit too different than what made them appealing to me at first. And then BTS, I haven't super enjoyed any of their releases after Dynamite. And then ENHYPEN, I actually liked them for their first couple of years, but now with the release of Blessed Cursed, I'm scared to see what direction they're gonna go in next. How I view Hybe is that I just can never really trust that I'm gonna get a good release from them whenever one of their groups has a comeback. And since their other groups have all followed this sort of pattern where I like their earlier stuff, but then eventually I just don't like any of their releases, now whenever I think of Hybe groups, I'm like, oh, when's that gonna happen to Enhypen or Lesserafim, you know? It's like, who's next? I know a lot of other people don't agree with me. I mean, the company has not fallen off financially at all. I mean, all of their groups are still so wildly successful. That's totally good for them, you know? But on the artistic level, for the past at least 3 years, the music that's come out of that company usually isn't to my enjoyment, and personally, that's why I would say that they've fallen off a bit. It's weird to say considering they're the biggest one, but when it comes to Hybe groups, whether it's an older one or a newer one, I'm just not really that inclined to get into them, because there's this pattern of them releasing good music at first, and then eventually just goes on a huge downward slope. And that's not really what I want to see from a group that I want to stan. So yeah, that's why I personally would say that Hybe have fallen off. And that concludes this video. As always, I usually don't do this because I feel like I don't need to, but I think I should this time. No hate intended with this video. This is just my opinion. And if you disagree, I truly do not mind if you want to voice that in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a thumbs up, and if you want to see more content from me, consider subscribing. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and without further ado, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.